is week 9, and we've got a big one today, 50 players to sort out. So before Sunday, let's break down these wide receiver rankings for week 9 of the 2024 NFL season. I can't see anything. Welcome to E&M Fantasy Football, where I combine industry-leading data, Vegas sportsbooks, and expert analysis to provide you with optimal weekly rankings for the utmost accuracy when setting your weekly lineups in your fantasy football league. I'm writing this on Wednesday night for Thursday's video. Expect more videos every week for the other unit groupings like running back, quarterback, and tight end. And click the playlist for all the rankings for week 9. To start off, the top 50 wide receivers this week, full PPR. It's worth noting, the middle and bottom tiers are flat, with over 2/3 the rankings below 60 yards. Wide receivers have underperformed and fell victim to injury, while running backs have flourished and remained healthy. We're going to kick it off with S tier. We're going to keep it brief. This is 90 to 70 yards. Pay attention. Justin Jefferson, 89 over-under versus the 24th ranked Indianapolis Colts secondary. A.J. Brown, 80 over-under versus the worst Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. CeeDee Lamb, 85 over-under versus Atlanta's league average secondary. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 75 over-under versus Green Bay's 19th secondary. Jamar Chase, 80 over-under versus Las Vegas, top 7 secondary. Tyreek Hill, 76 over-under versus Buffalo's league average secondary. Puka Nacua, 70 over-under versus Seattle's above average league secondary. And Malik Neighbors at 71 versus Washington's 6th best secondary. These guys are the only ones projected by sportsbooks to go over 70, 80 yards or more. Vegas tells us that these top 8 wide receivers are in the best position for fantasy football here in week 9. A tier begins with the other elite wide receivers. Vegas has these wideouts projected for 60 to 70 receiving yards each. Starting with Drake London at 9. 66 over-under for Drake. He gets the Dallas below average secondary. Atlanta is favored in the highest scoring game of the week. Everything London needs to positively regress back to form. Lock him in. Cooper Kupp at 10. 67 over-under, another positive regression candidate. It appears the Seahawks are falling apart and the Rams are doing the opposite with all their pieces returned. They are favorites in another slugfest slated for 48 total points. Devonta Smith at 11. 59 over-under. He gets basically the worst secondary in the league with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who has a very weary offense victim to injury. Eagles are heavy 7.5 point favorites. I mean, what else do you want? Jaden Reed at 12. 57 over-under. A bit low. We're going to include him in here for a couple of reasons. Reed gets Detroit's bottom 6 pass defense. They will most likely be playing from behind, and it is one of the highest totals at 48 points. And Green Bay's only dogs by a field goal, so they're going to need him. Terry McLaurin at 13. 64 over-under. He's went for 100 yards in 4 of his last 6 games. The total is low. And believe it or not, the Giants are only dogs by 4 points. They also have the 8th best pass defense. But I mean, he went for 125 yards against Chicago's top 10 pass D, so I wouldn't worry too much. And at 14, ErvinandM.com. ErvinandM.com is my company my best friend and I started in 2020. We literally make everything ourselves by hand. We have earrings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, tie clips, apparel, and more. Over a dozen curated gemstones and 100 handcrafted products. If you need a gift or something special for yourself, use the promo code in the description Find something you love and buy it today. Back to the video. If you like to spend money and look your best, go to ervinandm.com. We've got bracelets, rings, tie clips. We have hats, hoodies, necklaces, duffel bags, wall art, earrings, all handcrafted and made to order by my partner and I here in North Carolina. At 14, T. Higgins. He's day-to-day with a quad injury. Saturday, I'll post the final injury report. If he plays, they're nearly 8-point favorites. And he's averaged 68 yards per game. More if you exclude his first ramp-up game. So, ain't nobody worried about the Raiders' 7th best secondary. And Cedric Tillman at 15. Oh, baby. 50 over-under for Cedric. 90 yards per game. Oh my goodness. I know, it's only been 2 games, but he was to the tune of 81 yards and 99 yards in his first 2 full-time starts this season. The Chargers secondary is good, but this is going to be a close game that the Browns are going to have to throw the ball and playing from behind. Don't be scared. Slot him in. And G. Wilson at 16, 59 over-under. Not great. He plays Houston's 3rd best pass defense this week. And get this, the New Jersey Jets are favorites over the Houston Texans. In his past 4 games, Wilson has averaged 94 yards per game, 72 on the season. I dare say lock him in. We're going to begin the B tier with more starters, but with lower projections at about 50 to 60 receiving yards. And kick it off with Brian Thomas. 55 over-under, 71 yards per game, though. If he plays, he could finish top 10. He's averaged 72 yards per game, more if you take away his only bad week. He has a chest contusion and is considered day-to-day, but he had an MRI and was good to go. So throw up a prayer. You want him out there. Jaguars absolutely want him out there. And we'll go back-to-back with Downs and MPJ at 18 and 19. Hallelujah! Little Nicky is as happy to hear that Joe Flacco is starting as he was to hear that his father was going to rule over hell once again for another 1,000 years.
Hallelujah! Yes, sir!
When Joe Flacco is out there, Downs and Pittman go for 70 to 80 yards. And they get the Minnesota 30th worst pass defense to dice up. Flacco is going to have to air out the ball, playing from behind, in this shootout with the Vikings. Don't be afraid. And Lad McConkey at 20. Brother, 54 over-under, 67 yards per game. Has McConkey arrived? Probably. 111 yards is very good, and his targets since week 4 have been steady at about 7. The total for this game is not great, but they are favorites, and Jameis could absolutely make this a game and force the Chargers to up the pace. Devontae Adams, 21. 56 over-under. Devontae. What do we do? He's lost every game that he's played in. He's only got 5 receptions per game. And he's only went over 59 yards 1 time. To make matters worse, the Jets look like they're completely Jover. The Houston's 3rd best pass defense is not going to let Adams embarrass them. I don't know. Throw up a prayer. He's in danger of irrelevancy. Cortland Sutton, 22. 51 over-under, 54 yards per game. He's been 50-50 over or under through 8 weeks. But if there was ever a more probable time, it is now. He faces the Baltimore Ravens. Worst of the worst of the worst, sir. Pass defense. But it's quite worrisome that the Broncos are underdogs by 10 points. 10 points. That's pretty much as bad as a spread as we ever see. Chris Olave, 23. He's averaged his line. 55 yards per game, 55 over-under. But this week, he gets the 25th worst Panthers secondary. I mean, I don't know. He's went under in 3 of 7 games, but get this, in the 4 he went over, it was to the tune of 81 yards, 86 yards, 87, and 107. So I'd slot him in. Darnell Mooney at 24. 53 over under, 62 yards per game. Similarly to Olave, Mooney has only went over 3 times this season, but going over 5 out of 8 games on an average of 80 yards per game is very good. He gets the Cowboys' 20th worst pass defense, so probability is on his side in the highest scoring game of the week with the Falcons favored. Which brings us to C tier and higher volatility. Vegas has this group for roughly 50 yards, but with more concerns capping their ceiling. Romeo Doubs at 25. He's averaged 55 yards per game, 72 per game in his last 3, though. He faces the 27th worst Lions pass D and is slated by Vegas to be one of the highest scoring games of the week, with the Packers only down by a field goal. So he could be fine, but it is kind of a coin toss. Zay Flowers at 26. He faces Denver this week, and after getting embarrassed by the Browns last week, they could get embarrassed again by Denver. His line is set at 57. He's averaged 66 yards per game. But the Broncos secondary is 4th best against wideouts. If Vegas has their way, I mean, they're 10-point favorites, Baltimore. I mean, that means a lot of running the ball. He's 50-50 for over-unders this season. I would go lower on this one. Khalil Shakir, 27. This is the highest he's been, I think. 38 over-under. Just absolutely insulting. 60 yards per game is what he's averaged this season. He's overperformed. Another guy who's performed better than public opinion and better than sportsbooks are giving him credit. The issue this week is he has to face the Dolphins' 5th best secondary, and though the Bills are favored by 6, the total is very high at 49. So take the over. 38 is insulting. MHJ. I mean, this sucks. Maserati Marv has averaged his line of 51 yards with a 52 over-under this week. He's only put the pedal to the metal in 3 games. The other 5 games, he was like parked in the garage. I mean, 4 yards, 45 yards, 36 yards, 0 yards, 21 yards. I mean, to make it even worse, he has to face the Bears' top 10 pass D that have a chip on their shoulder from last week's upset. I mean, not great. Jacoby Myers, 54 yards per game, 50 over under this week. 54 yards per game for Myers. He faces the bottom 15 Bengals pass D and has averaged 54 yards per game. He faces the bottom 15 Bengals pass D. He's averaged more than 54 yards if you take away his only bad game of the season. The only problem here is the Raiders are almost certainly going to get boat raced. The problem here is the Raiders are almost certainly going to be boat raced as 8-point dogs. There might not be much of a fight here. And we'll go back to back with Lockett and JSN at 30 and 31. Lockett has outperformed JSN this season, albeit by 2 yards on average per game. The Rams secondary is league average, but the Seahawks look dysfunctional without Metcalf, and the Rams are on fire. So Vegas says it's going to be the closest game of the week, however, with a huge point total, but I fear we just see a lot of KW3 and more dysfunction. Keon Coleman, high as he's been as well, 32. He comes in at 25 over under. It's despicable. He's averaged 50 yards per game. I mean, another insulting line from Vegas. The only issue this week is, again, the Dolphins secondary and the fact that Coleman is one of the last looks for Josh Allen. Coleman's fine, but there's simply too many that play ahead of him, probably for it to matter. Which brings us to D tier. We're officially concerned. These guys are your last viable options. They're projected for about 40 to 50 yards, but they have the most going against them, lowering their floors and ceilings. And at 33, it's DJ Moore. He's underperformed all season. His over-under is set at 52. He's only had 48 yards per game. And that is just not cutting it for a perennial 1,000-yard receiver. He has to get it done this week against the Cardinals' bottom 8 pass defense. The total's okay for the matchup. I will say the Cardinals are favored. I don't know. Moore does not look good. Calvin Ridley at 34, 50 over under. Another first rounder in real life that is falling by the wayside thanks to their organization's roster design. 46 yards per game is not what you want to hear, but the good news is the Titans are favored, and New England's secondary is bottom 10, so there's a chance. Jalen Tolbert at 35, 40 over under, 48 yards per game. Once again, this is the highest scoring game of the week. My man barely gets 4 receptions per game, though, so Atlanta's basically league average against the pass, but his 48 yards per game, I mean, the fact that the total is so high and the Cowboys should be playing from behind, I mean, that's the only hope that he goes over those 40 yards. Jordan Addison at 36. He's averaged his line, 45 over under, 46 yards per game. But get this, he gets less than 3 receptions per contest. I mean, it's abysmal. The Colts are bottom 10 against the pass, but that will almost certainly not be a factor in elevating his play this week. He's got to catch more than 3 passes. Oh my goodness. And Jalen Waddle at 37. Another martyr to fantasy war. Waddle, too, has fell by the wayside as Achane seemingly steals too much volume for Waddle to be relevant. He's a coin toss on 45 yards. Not what you expected from such a talented receiver in years past. And Amari Cooper at 38. Until we see him go for 100 yards, he's going to stay lower than the other two. It's a 49 over under. He's averaged 43 yards per game. Candidly, they're all close. Coleman, Shakir, and Amari. But Amari is certainly the most ready and talented, but chemistry and scheme determine production, not statistics from last season or other teams. Jerry Jeudy at 39. 45 over under, 43 yards per game. I mean, it remains to be seen if he can repeat with Jameis as the third wide receiver, who's probably the last look on the team. But 43 yards isn't the worst. All things considered, he managed 79 yards with 8 targets from Winston. But that could prove a whole lot harder against the 9th best pass defense of the Chargers this week. Romanunze at 40. 36 over under, 41 yards per game. He's another coin toss. He's went under 4 out of 7 games, while 5 out of 8 receivers went over against the Cardinals' soft secondary. The problem here is 41 yards just isn't cutting it, and neither is 2.9 receptions per game. It's abysmal. From here, though, it's actually RIP. It's pure desperation. It's less than 40 yards. Less than 40 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson. DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I'm saying? Go buy something. Xavier Worthy. Keenan Allen. Tank Dell. Pop Douglas. I mean, Xavier Legette, Jontavian Wicks, Elijah Moore, Jalen McMillan. Anybody, everybody. It doesn't matter. They all go here. Anyone who's left. And I'll put your top wideouts full screen on screen now. Thanks for staying to the end. It's quarterbacks and tight ends tomorrow, and if you missed the running backs, click the playlist. I sincerely hope this helps everyone watching. Subscribe, turn on post notifications so you can see all the videos each week before submitting your lineups. It's free, so it's a good value. But if you like spending money, use my promo code and spend it at ervinandm.com. Support me, support you, buy something from my store, and watch some more videos.